3, 2, 1. Anthony Darby.
Chuck Hen.
We have a very special guest, Brian Meyers. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. Really excited to be on here today. Full disclosure, this is my first podcast, so
Awesome.
Perfect.
yeah, no, I'm excited.
Awesome.
It's something that I actually have a couple more lined up, so this is going to be like a good. Let's see how bad or good I am. So.
I feel almost like a season better now.
Yeah.
I think we've probably released 7 or 8 so far. We recorded about 5 or so with just Chuck and I to figure out what is it like to get set up in front of
And
microphones.
each time we do it, something changes and there's iterations, and we go back and watch the tape. You're like, damn, I didn't speak loud enough or clearly enough. And
Yeah, no, it's funny when you be in front of the camera. You know, things change, right?
Yeah.
Like things you want to do don't exactly happen. But I will say, I've actually watched a couple of these or seen a couple of these before. I think you guys do one of the best jobs of organic marketing and advertising your company. Obviously, with the limitations in our industry, you can't necessarily put a dollar behind a post to help reach that. So doing things like this only enhances your profile online and on social. So I think this is a great idea, and I think you guys are doing an incredible job.
Yeah, I think the value for us, I really appreciate that first off. But I think the value for us is the fact that you're right. Like, it's great for us in our dispensary, but it's also cool because we don't have the ability to push the stuff out. And we're starting to get some traction. And I think it's because we're giving people behind the scenes. We bring people like you on. It's not really about us any longer. We've really lost our muster. At this point, it's all about the guests that we bring on.
Sure.
And, what you're going to hear today is you're going to hear Chuck and I's background, what it's like to run a dispensary, and then someone who's providing solutions to the industry and really solving challenges in a huge way to make us be able to better serve patients. So try to set a little foundation here. So another cool thing is Brian and I and Chuck and I, this is the first time we've actually met in person. So, but Brian is from Salisbury, something that Chuck and I don't even get to claim. Although I love this great town and I plan to live here forever. I'm a come here. I'm not a from here, and that's a designation that you get the title that you have. So you grew up in Salisbury, right? Where'd you go to high school?
Yeah, so born and raised in Salisbury. I grew up on the Wycomico River in High Banks.
Yeah,
so right
near
my favorite ferry. One of the coolest neighborhoods because it wasn't too big, so everyone knew each other. All the kids hung out. Felt like everyone had kids around the same time, so I was always outside playing with the neighbors and so forth. Went to Salisbury school till about 3rd grade, so got that private school life. But I don't know if it was my parents or it was me. I just wanted more kids, being around and so forth. So,
did you play sports?
Yeah, I played sports. When I was younger, I was really into soccer. Some of the standout soccer players in my age group that came out of Salisbury, I played with them. Same with lacrosse, basketball, and then went to North Salisbury, and then went to Bennett, and then ended up at Parkside for high school. And so I was there, graduated in 2005.
That's awesome. So a few years younger than us. And then where'd you go after Parkside?
Yeah, so I love Salisbury, but it wasn't like I grew up on the water, and went to Ocean City, got into the whole surfing thing, was a lifeguard on the beach there for several years, and really just was I love the water. And one of my dreams in life was to live out in Hawaii. And so I'm a very independent person. And so I convinced my parents to allow me to go to the University of Hawaii for my college education, and I couldn't have picked a farther place from Salisbury. But honestly, that's the way I like it. I like to do my own thing, to try new things, and I'm an independent person, so I love my family, but it's okay if I only see them a couple times a year.
Right.
So that was kind of my mindset, and so I got up and left Maryland, and honestly, I didn't really have a plan on ever coming back here, which we'll get into how I ended back up here, but. I will say Salisbury's changed a lot over the last couple of years.
That is for sure, right?
Mayor Day, who I know quite well, has done a fantastic job, him and his team. And just driving in this morning, just all the road work and the building that's going on downtown. And I know that you guys have the Salisbury Folk Festival in September, which is going to be really exciting, which I hopefully will be able to make it down here.
Right now, it's a U.S. Softball Festival. Wednesday night, I come downtown and there's a parade in the middle of the street. I mean, Jake has done a phenomenal job. Salisbury is really on the growth. We have a new amphitheater as you're heading out, and He wrote us a letter of recommendation 4 years ago when we were doing this and believed in us and has always been very supportive. So shout out to Jake and his regime and the progress that Salisbury's making. So go ahead.
Where did I end off? So I went to University of Hawaii, got into, went out there to school, but still was going out there to go surf, do all that. Really, at the end of the day, it was such an amazing experience from a culture perspective. Because a lot of what we deal with today with, the racial issues, the diversity, inequality, like out in Hawaii as a white Caucasian, like you're not the dominant race. And so you very early on need to be able to understand and respect other cultures, or else you won't be respected yourself. And
especially
so,
as a surfer out there.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Oh,
Like,
God. That's got to be a harsh
You're
environment,
like in the
right?
lowest of the pecking order, a white Caucasian guy coming out to the lineup, and just like there's so many times that people just look at me and just shake their head.
He'll be gone.
Like,
Yeah.
get out of here, Holly. And I was like, oh my God, I just want to catch a couple waves. But no, it was being outdoors, right? Like I was never inside, so I was hiking up mountains, I was body surfing, you name it. And then I was kind of getting burnt out from the whole surfing thing. I love to surf, but that's really all I was doing. And so I just walked down to a local outrigger club. So in Hawaii, it's similar to how football and soccer and lacrosse are here. Like outrigger paddling is their state sport. And so there's clubs everywhere from like 3 years old all the way to 80 years old. Everyone does it. And I just went down there one day after class, was curious and see what this is all about, and immediately was just hooked. And it was very like team oriented, very family oriented, and it just brought a whole nother perspective of what I could do on the water, which really motivated me even more than I was before to be a waterman.
So an outrigger club's a canoe club, I guess, correct?
Canoe. There's different types of paddling. Yeah. Most people know me now as a stand-up paddler, which I'll get to, but from an outrigger perspective, there's 6-man outrigger, which is how I started. So there's 6 people in a canoe, and it's all about timing and efficiency. It doesn't matter how strong you are as a paddler. It matters if you're in cadence with the person in front of you and behind you. Because you could be the strongest paddler in Hawaii, but if you're not in sync with the other people in the boat, like you're not going anywhere.
Well, as strong as the weakest link,
yeah,
right?
and I've always been like, I've always been a team guy. Like I love the team feeling. Even in business, like that's what I strive to find. And so that was really how I got connected with outrigger paddling. So not to go too far down the story because it is super complex and really awesome. But the reason I came back to Maryland is because I was adopted as a newborn. And so my birth mother was at Salisbury University as a freshman and ended up getting pregnant with my birth father who was still in high school. And so she ended up having a baby her freshman year at Salisbury, and for her own reasons, which I won't talk about because it's all positive. But she gave me up for adoption. Lucky enough, my parents that raised me, my dad was a cardiologist at Peninsula Regional for over 20 years, and my mom was a nurse at the time. And everyone knew at the hospital they were looking for a kid. And so when my birth mother gave birth to me, one of the nurses that worked with my dad saw me in the infirmary and was like, hey, you got to come down here. You got to see this kid. Like, I think this is the one. And like, not even kidding, within an hour, like I was home with them.
That's crazy.
And it was a very open adoption, very surreal experience. But I was raised well. Again, I was raised here in Maryland, and my parents that raised me live in Northern California now. But after graduating college, my mom came out to Hawaii, and we were just sitting on the beach drinking a couple of Coronas, and she just dropped like, hey, you ever had any interest in meeting your birth parents? I mean, I've thought about it, but I was always raised well, so it was never something that was like, hey, like I want to do this, or hey, like I hate my life. Like I had an amazing life. And so, funny enough with how technology is nowadays, I knew who my family, they knew who she was, her name. So I just looked her up on LinkedIn and found her very quickly. And I remember I was working at a restaurant while I was in school, and I had to go to work that night. And I had found her on LinkedIn, and I saw her picture. And she was just like platinum blonde hair, and she's just like, it was just very like close up face picture. And just kind of, it freaked me out. I was like, oh my God, that's my birth mom. And so I went to work and lasted about 30 minutes and was like, hey, I got to go home. and went home and just stared at her picture for like an hour. And then with LinkedIn, how it still kind of is today is like you can only send like a quick message to someone if you weren't friends with them.
Yep.
So within like a sentence, I had to describe who I was, what my relationship with her was, and why she should contact me. And so I was basically like, hey, my name is
Talk
Brian
about elevator
Meyers.
pitch.
Yeah, that's
Right. I think that was a great learning tool for cold
For
business
business,
emails
yeah.
and messages and so forth. But I was basically like, hey, my name is Brian Meyer. You gave birth to me on 5/7/87. Please reach out. I would love to connect with you. And she did. So long story short, got to meet her, got to meet my birth father. After meeting both of them and their families, I realized like, oh my God, I have all these people that I don't know that I'm related to. As a curious person, I basically dropped everything in Hawaii and moved back to Maryland in the winter of 2012, and took a couple months just to meet everyone. And
Where do they live now?
yeah, everyone. Well, so they both live in Annapolis, and most of the family is from Clinton, like Southern Maryland area. Deep-rooted families, and
So what year is that you come back to Maryland?
So I was in the winter of 2012. So it was January. I shipped my truck from Hawaii to Oakland, flew to Oakland, and then drove my truck across country in about 3 days to Maryland.
And what did you go to school for? Besides surfing?
And,
surfing and Cronus
So
on the
this was an
beach,
interesting
right?
time in college too, right? Because look, at the end of the day, I'll tell you straight up, like I wasn't a school person. Like I'm smart, but I would call myself more street smart. Like I've taught myself a lot of things that I've learned in life.
I put myself in the same boat.
So, where were we going with this?
What you did in school.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Your track.
So when I was in school, I was big into sports. Like I was always a big sports nerd. Like, I watched Sports Center back when you could watch like 4 hours a day and it would still be entertaining. And I always knew I wanted to work for a professional sports team. Like that was my dream. And so I went to school for sports marketing, except they didn't have a sports marketing degree. So I figured out that this was new back then. It's oversaturated now, but there was a program called interdisciplinary studies where you could essentially create your own major.
I think my brother actually did that too.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things
surprised me at all.
Yeah.
there were a couple things I did want to do in life, and there's a couple things I didn't want to do in life. And the didn't want to do in life was take chemistry, take statistics, because again, I naturally wasn't smart in math and science, and saw how difficult it was for my friends. I was like, all right, I know I don't want to take those classes, and I know I want to take these classes. So I was able to figure out how to create a major without taking those elective classes that they make you take.
That's amazing. It's funny. Like I sympathize with that so much. I took Rocks for Jocks to get my science class. I took astrology.
Yeah.
I'm learning Mohs skill of hardness. Stuff that's super going to help me out later on in life. And I was in a business major because I wanted to avoid a lot of the math and statistics and college algebra. That's what kind of led me to be a poli-sci major.
That's awesome.
So
where'd you go to school?
Salisbury.
Salisbury. Okay,
Chuck
so
and
both
I.
of you went to
Yeah,
Salisbury.
we both
Did you
went
know
to
each
Salisbury.
other when
We
you
were
were?
roommates.
Yeah, so we were roommates in school. Yep.
That's awesome.
Okay, so you create your own major.
Yep.
Do you give it a name, or is it just interdisciplinary?
Yeah, it was sports management. So did a lot of writing. There were some sports classes, a lot of fitness. Fitness is a big part of my life. I've always had different ways of staying fit, working out. So
Are you
that
been a tech guy?
So I wouldn't call myself a tech guy in a sense that like I was a coder or I would get that into it, but I was always tech enabled, that I always had technology around me and I enjoyed using it. So from a consumer standpoint, I would call myself a tech guy, but understanding how tech works, no, that's not me.
So was it as blind of faith as I want to go see my family? I'm putting my truck on the ship and I'm going to drive over there and I'll find work because I can do that.
Yeah, work wasn't really on my mind, and honestly, just from the perspective of family, is I was raised very well and I was living in Hawaii, so I had those two things going for me. And so before I went down that process, I was like, at the end of the day, the worst case scenario is they don't want to meet me or they don't want to accept me. And, I'd be bummed out for a little bit, but then I'd go back to like, well, I'm living in Hawaii. I have a loving
I'll just
family.
go back to my awesome
That's my life.
Like, sorry,
It was kind of like, whatever happens, happens. And I was extremely fortunate. It was literally a best case scenario. I mean, everyone gets along with everyone. My parents that raised me have met both sides of my birth family several times. And the only bummer now is that my parents that raised me live in Northern California. Funny enough, related to this podcast, they live in a small town called Ukiah, which is in the Emerald Triangle of, Northern California. And my dad still practices medicine. And so legitimately, I've figured out that they're the only family in their small town, which is actually called Potter Valley, that they don't grow cannabis. And I didn't know that when I first went there to visit, but I was always woken up at like 6 to 7 in the morning by these dump trucks bringing soil up the mountain. And I was like, what are they doing? And then I was like, got it. So it was definitely a different experience growing up in Salisbury and then going to see them because they live on 50 acres minus what we lived in Salisbury, which was like 2 with houses around us where you can't really see anything where they live. And so it was, for them, it's awesome because they're older now. They want to chill out, have peace. But for me, it's like I'm still like want to do stuff. And
solitude.
Yeah, so it's always an experience getting out there. I mean, it takes literally a full day to even get out there.
So, what was the first job you took, or what was was the kind of the strategy after you?
Yeah, so when I first moved back to Maryland, I first worked at a fitness facility, actually in Edgewater, called Parisi Speed School. I'm not sure if you were familiar with that. It was like it's right near like Edgewater Fitness. But anyways,
No, I don't think it's there anymore.
so I wasn't, fitness has always been a big part of my life. So I was always educated on fitness and movements and things like that. So I was like, I'll get a job here, and as I'm still figuring out my new life. And so I did that for a couple months. And then I ended up getting a job at Under Armour corporate as a seasonal customer service person. So answering calls and emails and people coming in or calling, for Under Armour stuff. And that was an awesome experience because Under Armour, their culture is amazing where it's like you almost feel
Good
like you're
training and
you almost feel like you're in college again.
Yeah.
There's a lot of positive camaraderie. We're working very closely with each other. And so that was a great experience, really like entry into the workforce. And then shortly after that, I applied and got a job with the Baltimore Orioles in their marketing department. And that was a huge milestone in my life because it was always...
That was your goal, right?
Yeah.
That was always a goal, was to work for a professional sports team. And that was a great experience in a lot of different ways, both positive and negative, because I went from Under Armour, which is like young, not to say working with the Orioles, people weren't driven, but it was just a different culture. Like it just night and day. And at the end of the day, when I got there, like I enjoyed what I was doing, but I wasn't able to challenge myself the way I wanted to. And I wanted more, I wanted a sort of a different culture. It's interesting how the workforce has changed as far as, what you wear, what you're allowed to wear. So it's like a suit and tie. And I came from Hawaii. I've been on the beach my whole life. The last thing I want to do is put on a suit and tie, right? I'm a firm believer. It's not how you look, it's how you act and how you produce. And so right when I was with the Orioles, I started getting the entrepreneurship vibe. So I don't know if you want me to end there, if you want to ask another question, you want me to keep going? Cool.
Going.
So when I lived in Hawaii, I got in outrigger paddling and moved back to Maryland. But I didn't really have outrigger paddling here. But that was right when stand-up paddleboarding was really starting to take off. And so my family lived in downtown Annapolis on the water, so I was fortunate enough to be able to interact with water immediately and started paddling, started competing in different local races. And there was already a few water sport outfitters would do kayak tours and things like that. And I would always sit out there and be like, God, I bet you I could do that on a paddleboard, like run tours and do fitness classes. So again, no formal business training, but thankfully the internet provides you a lot of information. Went on there, figured out, what I need to do, how to write a business plan, do all this stuff that you don't think about when you're creating a business, but you have to do. And so with the inspiration,
I know that all too well.
Yeah, exactly. We'll talk about it, but
Yeah.
you guys deal with it on a daily basis. But so my birth
Crazy.
family really motivated me to go after it because they were all entrepreneurs themselves. And so, I ended up starting what was called Capital Sup. It's a stand-up paddleboard company, now different types of water sports as well, in downtown Annapolis. And so I started that in the winter of 2013, founded the company in 2014, brought on two good friends of mine. And so there were the three of us. And again, none of us had any formal business training, but it was right when social media was starting to get big, especially from a business standpoint of being able to promote your business online. And one thing we really knew how to do well is drive community in and paddle. And again, stand-up paddleboard's taking off. Social media's taking off. Small business, Annapolis is a tourist destination. People come to Annapolis to get on the water. Traditionally,
you guys got some momentum, right?
Traditionally by both. So the momentum came together, and we grew the company very quickly. It was a hell of an experience. Like, you don't get into creating a paddleboard business to make money, but from an experience standpoint, I mean, I got a master's education in entrepreneurship, and I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for that experience. And that's how I like to explain it to people. Long story short, there is this past year, I ended up selling my share of the company to my business partners, and they've now taken hold of the company and are keeping it going. And I mean, it's doing better than ever. So, and it's always about building a great team. And so I've done a lot in my life. I've had a lot of successes. I've had some failures, but it wasn't by myself. There was always a team, which I know you guys have a super strong team at Peninsula.
So how do you get the THSuites?
Yeah, that's a funny story too.
Which is where we first all kind of met.
Yeah.
Is when Brian was with THSuite.
Yeah.
So the lead to that story is while I was still at Capital Sup, we were in downtown Annapolis at a marina now called the South Annapolis Yacht Center, but it used to be called Sarles Boatyard Marina. It's the oldest working boatyard in Annapolis. It's getting redeveloped right now, but up until the last year, it was over 100-year-old marina, and we were in the oldest building. And so we transformed this vacant old building into this powerful energy source coming from the water, which is why the owner of the marina let us open it. But how THSuite got involved is because one of our employees, Natalie, who's a professional herself, this was more of a side gig for her because she just loved us. She loved paddling. Her boyfriend would always come and work under the marina pavilion. And me, being a curious person, always wants to know who's who and what. And so I would keep asking her. I was like, hey, like, who is that? What does he do? And she was kind of timid to tell me. I don't know why, but eventually she did. And she's like, oh, his name's Adam. He owns a grow and dispensary in Colorado. He does a bunch of other, medical sales stuff too. Why don't you go chat with him? Immediately, I was like, oh, I'm going to go talk to him. And so him and I developed a really strong relationship. I always love learning from people that have already made it to where I want to go, and he was that type of person. Super rad guy too. I'm sure you guys will meet him eventually. But I was always, the conversations got into business. Was like, hey, like, if you ever get anything interesting, let me know. Because the good and bad about Capital Sup, the good part is that it allowed me to have freedom to do other things because it was a seasonal business. That also is a bad thing too, because then it goes back to kind of how you structure your day. Like, I'm always juggling multiple things, and it's something that I've adapted pretty well to, but it's not easy. And so in the winter of 2018, so it was like January, he approached me and said that he had invested and is a co-founder in a startup cannabis point-of-sale company called THSuite. And so I was immediately like, oh, I'd love to learn more, and started out part-time to kind of understand what exactly I was getting myself into, and saw a real opportunity to grow within the company very quickly because it was a startup. There was a need for a business development communications on-site person. Myself being in Maryland becoming a new medicinal market, I saw opportunity there. And so I came on board with him. And
did you have any ties to Canada? Like, did you use cannabis?
Yeah, I mean, not really. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, I've used it every now and then. I don't consider myself a daily user, but it was just a super interesting industry. And at the end of the day, I like working with people that I enjoy being with. And what I've found in the cannabis industry is, for the majority of people that I've interacted with, are in it for the right reasons. And like, I like to use the word like cookie cutter. I don't know if it's correct, but like, I feel like in most industries, like it's too structured. Like, I love freedom because there's so many different ways you can accomplish something nowadays. And so this industry is all about being creative and all about finding solutions, as you guys know.
Yep.
And so that was really what attracted me to the industry.
There's plenty of problems here.
Yeah, exactly. So like THSuite is a cannabis point of sale company. They also build an ERP technology. For my research, I've seen a lot of different systems, and THSuite is not a perfect system, but there isn't a perfect system, because I will say, and it's funny because people that I have my medical card, so I visit dispensaries, talk to them, interact with them, and they always hate on the point of sale. And I'm like, I finally was like, guys, you got to understand something. This industry is like a sprint race. We're all racing to the finish line to try to be the best. And sometimes we work harder than technology. And building technology, I've learned very quickly, is not easy. And there's so many fine details in the core. And it's just an example, like one missed line of code can just jack up the entire system. And
then screw up your metric.
Yeah.
And screw up your metric,
and
yeah.
Then, so I guess we sometimes oversight some of these things. So if anyone doesn't know, THSuite, we talked about on our Friday updates on Facebook a lot. We've tried to give them a ton of credit. They literally were a savior to us, because we originally had MJ Freeway, and it's Friday afternoon, and our system crashes, and we're locking our doors, and there's 15 people out front, and it was just the most embarrassing experiences that we continue to have with them. Our patient times were really, really high as well. The data that we were getting out of there was atrocious. It was unreliable. And for our dispensary, as one of the larger ones in the state, to make that type of a transition and change point of sales was probably one of the biggest nightmares and fears that we had operating. But I can tell you that the transition from THSuite was done in about 48 hours. Yeah. Like, it wasn't perfect, but it was great. Mm-hmm. And our patients now have a much better experience. Our leadership team is able to make much better decisions now because of the data that we're getting out of THSuite. So I would be more than happy to recommend them for any dispensary owner. I mean, it's really been phenomenal for our business. And that's kind of how we first met. Was I know that you guys did a lot of work with Bob Davis at High Tide, so I had heard about you guys through them, and then Mike Brenner in Salisbury say, hey, you check out THSuite. And for us, we had thought that we went with the most expensive and kind of the Cadillac program, and so we were almost like snake bit in terms of when we were looking for our next provider. But it was great to have someone that was locally in Maryland, and the platform is just much cleaner and nicer. So you were doing business development for those guys for almost a year?
Almost a year, yeah. I mean, I really dove deep into it at the beginning of the summer. So that's when we really started going to market. So Bob Davis was our flagship dispensary in Maryland, and so he took the biggest risk because it was an unknown solution. He was opening a new dispensary. He didn't know what to expect. Sometimes we didn't know what to expect. But, although it wasn't a perfect experience, it was an awesome experience, and I think he would say that he made the right decision. I think one of the value adds of THSuite is its mobility. So, for example, you guys have a different way of your patient to employee experience and how you interact with them and how you take payments. So it's a little different than what the standard is, at least here in the state of Maryland. And so you need a solution that would be able to adapt to your workflow, not the other way around. And I think that was a great selling point for me to dispensaries. Like, hey, we can change our solution to base your workflow, because everyone's doesn't have the same workflow at the end of the day. So I know for you guys, that was a huge benefit with going for THSuite.
And I think that was, like, from my standpoint, operationally, like, that was the number one benefit, because you're small and agile. Some of these larger POS systems have been around, so they're legacy systems, and they were developed on these regulations and rules for states out west, and they necessarily didn't work with Maryland. So when THSuite came in, a lot of their system and their processing was built on Maryland's kind of stuff.
Right.
And I'm sure you guys THSuite's ran from there with it. But that was a huge value add for us.
And I will say too, and this applies to a lot of things. It's whenever you hear people talk is like, to really grow your business, you need to be working on your business, not in your business. And I feel like some of these other point of sale systems, are antiquated to the point of you're spending too much time in the business, especially with metric integration, seed to sale tracking. I mean, there's one thing that I didn't realize getting into this that I do now, that the point of sale industry in cannabis is wildly complex to the point I've never even realized it. And I went head first into it, did multiple.
You're going to be married to a regulatory system.
Yeah.
If you're in a bar, restaurant, point of sale system, there's a liquor board, and you got to print out some reports and things like that. But it's not this real life. I guess maybe controlled dangerous substances in the pharmacy world might be the closest thing to that, like interacting with the CRISP website.
Yeah.
But
just think about how many integrations. Metric is Maryland's, right? MJ Freeway's others. So like each state's completely different because it's still federally legal. So like to tie it in individually, it's just hard. Right? Yeah, a lot of them are trying to do both.
Well, ultimately, I think that's to the point of sale companies, unless, what is it? I think the top 5 point of sale companies, so like Greenbits, MJ, BioTrack, Kova, there's a couple others. They own over 85% of the market, right? And from my experience, and I'm sure you guys understand this too, is it's daunting to change your point of sale. It's not an easy experience. Yeah. There's a lot to be done. And so for these upstart point of sale companies, it's going to be hard for them to convert. And so they really need to target the new industries. And so what you're seeing with THSuite is that they're building out the vertically integrated component so they can touch all components of grow, processing, dispensaries. So I think you're really starting to see a lot of the companies start to adapt to that, and then also find different integration partners that they can, do online menus or ordering, or what we'll get into from the payment side of things. So it's interesting.
So that's a good transition. It's been well documented, if anyone's ever listened to me, about the challenges that we face from a banking standpoint, from a payment acceptance standpoint, and not just in our dispensary. We have completely transitioned our business model we have Peninsula Holistics, which is we make CBD tincture. We have a salve as well, and we've transitioned our model because our website and our online payment process from a customer experience point was unsustainable. We kept getting shut down. I have a background in this, and I searched high and low for almost 8 weeks to every high-risk merchant service provider that I used to know back in the day. And when I finally settled with Elevon, thinking, well, at least I know Elevon, then in a slip of a hat, 7,500 accounts get shut down in a single day. We were one of those accounts. So we've transitioned away and are really focusing on a B2B strategy now. But you have created some solutions that are going to hopefully bring some ease to the hemp side first, and then eventually cannabis. So let's talk about Solvent, which is really your focus right now, right?
It is, yeah. I basically stopped everything I was doing in life except my nonprofit to focus on this, because anything great's a full-time job, but this is like 2 full-time jobs into one. And so to really solve the complex problem of banking and payments, one, you need to have an amazing technology, you need to have an amazing team, and you have to have amazing and creative idea. And we have all 3. So I already spoke about Adam. So he's one of the founding partners of Solvent. He also has another business partner, Jason, who runs the dispensary and grow, and they have a couple other businesses too. They've literally probably done every type of business within cannabis over the last 15 years. So from an industry experience,
they've seen it all.
They've seen it all. They've worn all hats. They've seen the worst. They've seen the best. And so from industry experience standpoint, so that's our core team on that, in that silo. Then we have our technical side. And so we have, his name's Tony Richards, our CEO, and Nikki Rogers, who we call her VP of Experience. But they formerly owned a company called Pilster Digital. Both of them should be working at like Facebook or Google, be making $500,000 to $1 million a year, because they're that brilliant. But they chose the path of doing it their way. And so they've been running their own custom enterprise software company for the last 10 years. And, just as one of the highlight projects of Tony and his brilliance is he developed from scratch an entire ERP platform for the biggest trader vegetable oil manufacturer in the United States. And he did it pretty much by himself. And it took him, I think it was like 3 years, but to build a solution from scratch to now where that company is selling it to all the big trading companies in the world, I mean, that just speaks to what this guy's able to do. So what our true value add is from a technical standpoint is not only do we have the thought, but we have the internal action within all of our technology that is being built in-house with them leading that vision. And as one of the main reasons why we've been able to grow so quickly, we officially started this company in January. Now we've been working on this idea a month to 2 months previous of that. And we like to solve problems, and we're like, what are the most complex problems within cannabis? And from Adam's and my experience of going through THSuite it was banking and payments. And so honestly, we started this company looking to build a merchant service solution like many other companies. And when we figured out that to build a merchant service solution, you can't, because unless you build technology for the financial institutions, because the banks and credit unions that operate in the space that are legally allowed to do so based on the Cole Memorandum in 2014 that has red flag guidelines that basically state what you need to verify and validate to allow to bank cannabis and to allow cannabis transactions. And so there are a lot of companies out there that have a banking compliance platform, which are great because for the banks it helps automate their due diligence, their KYC, their onboarding, their government reporting.
So if you've never owned a business or never tried to get merchant services, even if you're Johnny's Sub Shop, the process is typically going to be a 4 to 5 page application. They are going to run your credit. They're going to make sure that you're not on a terminated merchant file, that you've never been terminated from any of the card brands. They're basically going to they assess your risk and liability to process payments. A lot of people think I just go there and I get my payment processing. Well, if you have really bad credit or you have risk factors that the bank or the underwriters are going to deem liabilities, you're going to pay a much higher rate. They may take a percentage of your sales. What they do, they may hold anywhere between 15 to 20% of your sales. So for every $1.20 gets put in this reserve account until they deem you to be a good customer. So even for the banks to process a traditional low risk business at the small business level, they still run a fairly high risk.
Correct.
And everything from these merchants getting in a pinch and running their family member's credit card to float the $500 to keep the electric bill. I mean, in my background in merchant services, I've seen some really unscrupulous activities from small business owners, oftentimes in a pinch, just trying to survive, but doing things that would make any underwriter at the bank cringe and basically not be a happy person.
Totally. I think one of the biggest problems is just the underwriting experience and the onboarding experience, because at the end of the day, the financial institutions need to verify who are the individuals leading the company and what are you selling and all the details that they need to know to feel confident in you as a business.
Well, I was just going to say, so we have firsthand experience with this. I'll tell our story, and then I think everybody will be able to see exactly where Solvent fits in, like the need that it has in the industry, and it is a need. So like the first year we were in business, we were all cash. We didn't have a bank account.
For the dispensary.
It was absolutely miserable. I mean, you got some cool I'm going to say photo ops, but like it was cool once or twice, but for the majority of it was miserable. You can't pay people. It's difficult to pay taxes on time because they're all paid online. If you can't do that,
you're lumping around.
You're lumping
lumps of money around, looking around over your shoulder.
You can't pay Comcast.
Boxes.
You're getting money orders to pay things. It's a job in and of itself. It's a full-time job for multiple people to run a business that only operates in cash. So fast forward, we're finally able to get an account set up, and it's not like we just went to the bank and applied for a business account. And we were able to get it the next day. I mean, it was a couple month-long process, and then here it is July. We're still in the process of integrating our business and our systems into the bank. And the amount of information that we provided the bank was almost everything we had to provide the commission to get the application. I mean, it's a laundry list of due diligence. And I think that because they want to know where the money's coming from. If we're an all cash business, they need to know that it's a reliable source and the money's not being laundered, I guess, right? And that's kind of where I think where Solvent's
and then on the hemp side, we bank our hemp business with a small local bank. We don't have merchant services right now. We have like a little Square account that we can use for emergencies. That Square's not smart enough to point two and two together as long as we don't link a website. And every single time that we have a new batch of product, we're required to send in our third-party lab results to the bank so they can help verify. But really, to be honest with you, the bank came to us and said, okay, we want to work with you guys. We've had a good relationship with the bank for a long time. They banked us pre-application for the dispensary. But they had all these questions like, why is no other banks taking your business? How do we regulate you guys? What do you guys need to show us so that we can show our auditors and we can feel really confident in saying, yes, we have a CBD business, but here's their batch lab results that show that everything is less than 0.3% THC. And the idea behind this is there was no automation process. There was no real guidance for the financial institution. It was very much like the Wild Wild West. And when I compare that to what I've experienced to a traditional First Data app or a THSuite app, which is now pretty much a very quick process, everything is automated, fill in the blank PDF. The questions are the square footage of the building. I mean, it's the same information that every bank is going to seek, but everything now is automated. Nothing like that exists for really a bank or financial institution that wants to bank CBD hemp or let alone cannabis, right?
Totally, yeah, and that's where we come in. That's where Solvent comes in. So we're already developing that. We already have developed that for several banks. One of the largest acquiring banks in the United States that takes CBD. But again, it's the user experience for the merchant, but also from the experience from the bank. That it's automated, it's all digital, it's seamless. It quickens the time to onboard someone because the banks are all about lowering their risk, right? So if you can provide technology that up until a little while ago didn't really exist because, again, this was an illegal industry, they weren't banking that, that now you're seeing all these technologies come about. And what we're solving is that underwriting, onboarding experience, but also, compliance gets thrown around a lot. And yes, we do compliance, but it's more risk management. So our technology, not to get too far down the rabbit hole, and this applies to hemp, CBD, and cannabis, is when you have your banking product and your payments product talking to each other, you can assess in real time the risk profile for every single payment or every single dollar that comes into that financial institution. And our technology gives them that in real time, that anytime if you were a banker to go on our platform, you can see what the overall risk profile is of that merchant or any payment into that merchant's profile.
Is that like in January I did $34 in sales, in February I have $33,000 in sales, and all of a sudden a red flag is up to my account because my merchant account's going crazy, my bank account's going crazy, and there needs to be some way to connect these dots.
Correct.
But you could verify maybe that, hey, this is my first month of going live, and that's
totally, yeah. I mean, and integrated with, from the cannabis side, integrated with Metric, integrated with the point of sale, so we're getting that data. From the labs, we're getting the COAs of product. And so we're able to not only verify who you are as a person, where you're purchasing that product, right? Is it in a legal dispensary or a legal business, and what you're purchasing. And that's a big thing that we're coming about now is like the product, how to verify the product at the point of transaction. Because our vision for the company, it's funny because, we're in cannabis right now, but we're not a cannabis tech company. We're a financial technology company aiming to dissolve fraud before it happens, right? So in cannabis, we're aiming to dissolve fraudulent transactions within cannabis, but overall is to be able to stop the criminal intent or fraudulent transactions or payments before they hit the institution. So at Solvent, it's our duty to eliminate that risk before that money goes into the financial ecosystem. And so to do that, you have to build multiple products within one ecosystem so that we have a banking compliance product, we have an underwriting onboarding product, and we have a payments product, and they all speak to each other. And then at the bottom, we call it Ignis, which is our fraud and AML risk engine. So this algorithm can detect from different data points that we create based on the laws, regulations that can be changed anytime to, again, assess the risk profile of every merchant and every payment into the financial institution. So essentially, we're mitigating all their risk. And so they've never had this type of visibility ever to be able to work in high-risk industries.
So... Good.
No, I was just going to say, and I think I read, there's a couple really good articles. I know Yahoo Finance had one when you guys got some seed funding.
Yes.
And then Technically, I think had another good article, and it's amazing to see that you are coming up with this technology.
Well,
I mean, it's crazy because the banks, I mean, that's why they're not doing it, is because they don't know where the money's coming from, right? They can't prove it.
Right. Well, that's the thing I was explaining earlier, is that you have a handful of companies that have a banking compliance platform out that all do similar things, some better than others. But that's one piece of the pie, right? I mean, that's a piece, but it's not the total piece. And then you have a plethora of payment companies all trying to solve the payments industry in their own way
and a lot of them shady as the day is long, right?
I mean, there's I'll just drop it right now. There's a dispensary in Maryland that openly miscategorizes their transactions because they have a sub business in their dispensary business, and if you look at your bank statement, it doesn't say the dispensary's name, so that's happening. Then you have gift card type payment systems, you have closed loop electronic systems, you even have crypto.
So we get just a little shout out FYI to our patients. Oftentimes I'm presented with, how come you guys don't take cards? And my stance is, in our dispensaries, is none of the card brands, meaning Visa, MasterCard, American Express, and Discover, will allow any type of a cannabis transaction on their platforms at this point. So when you see these closed loop systems, or basically these prepaid gift card type situations, there a lot of them are either running through the debit networks and they're bypassing the 4 card brand networks, to my knowledge, or sometimes they're miscategorizing the payments, which is completely fraudulent. So, to be honest with you, these are workaround solutions that are skirting the laws and regulations within the banks and card brands. And until Visa, MasterCard, or Discover, or the card brands come and take a stance and say this is something that they're going to support, I don't think it's in our patients' best interest for us to flirt with one of these solutions. And quite honestly, they almost always charge the patient at the end of it. And it's sad because you see like a $1.50 transaction fee, and you know that if they're running it through the debit network, it's probably close to like a 7-cent bin fee for them, maybe 10 cents, and they're killing it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's shady, to say the least. And I have recently got, I took almost a year off of LinkedIn when I was just in the day-to-day of the dispensary, and it was kind of nice being a sales guy. I used to be in that thing all day long on Sales Navigator and all that bull crap. Mm-hmm. Probably for the last 6 months, from a networking perspective, I got back on there, and every day is a payment processor. Hey, I want to sell you my 1.59% cannabis processing, all legal. I'm like, no, it's not. Like, this is. So when I first heard of Solvent, actually, it's weird. So I saw some of your press releases come out, and then I was speaking at the Maryland Director of Economic Development Association, and you have some friends there in Startup Maryland that were advocating. I mean, I don't know what I said. I think I said something about banking challenges. Someone yelled, "Solvent! You got to check out Solvent. Go buy Solvent." So that kind of put things back on the radar, and you guys recently raised some seed money. And
we did.
Things are moving well. I thought it was really timely to have you on. Because I was curious, really, from my background, every solution that I've seen, I've almost always been able to say that's not really how it works,
sure.
Right? But with yours, you guys got to understand, another thing that's happening in every single boardroom at the bank right now is you have one guy in a suit who's in business development and sales saying, you guys have to let me bring on these businesses. They're doing tons of volume. They need capital. They're very healthy businesses. And then another guy with the glasses and risk management underwriting saying, we can't do that. And if you can satisfy the guy in underwriting and risk management and show, no, you can do that, and we can make this palatable for you in a way that no one's ever presented it to you, I think, honestly, I think that starts checking the boxes. I mean, some of the issues that we have are certainly from a regulatory standpoint, and Congress could do some things to flip a switch. But the market kind of does what the market wants, and if we can get a solution and actually lower the risk and make it more palpable for these financial institutions, whether Congress allows it or not, to your point, they'll try to operate under the Cole memo and they'll try to do these things. I mean, Severance Savings is doing it right now, and they're very forthcoming with their underwriters and forthcoming with their regulators, I should say, not their underwriters, but their regulators and their board. And but we know of, we took on a new vendor. When did we take on our new vendor friend from the Eastern Shore?
Oh, I guess 2 or 3 months ago. Yeah. So there's other banks out there that are doing similar things.
And they said, please make the check payable to a financial institution that's within 10 miles of us.
Really? Interesting.
It's
a
regular bank that doesn't participate in the cannabis industry. They don't have any cannabis clients, but come to find out, we got to write our check.
Severn obviously is one of the big banks. So they're one of two. The other one's Bulldog, Federal Credit Union up in Hagerstown. They're the two publicly announced financial institutions, and I've heard a couple other names out there. But the interesting thing is from a board perspective is more. I'm hearing more often than not the board is starting to get on board with this whole cannabis, hemp, CBD servicing those industries because one, it's a huge problem. Two, there's obviously an incentive from a financial perspective for these institutions. And what's going to happen is that, traditionally banks and credit unions, financial institutions aren't innovative. Like they don't innovate. And what's happening, not just in cannabis and hemp, but just overall is that there's a shift beginning with banking. And this is kind of off topic to cannabis, but related is if in Europe right now, there's a whole open banking PSD2 concept that's going to allow third-party companies like Facebook, like Google, to be able to intake money and basically be their own financial institutions. And so there's going to come a time here in the next few years that banks and credit unions are going to have a look in the mirror face conversation, be like, do I want to innovate or do I not? Because the ones that don't are going to have a really hard time keeping up with what's going to be happening here in the next few years. So the financial institutions that are taking, yes, a risk, but now that there's technology available for them to mitigate their risk to service these types of industries, they're setting themselves up for success because they're already going to get that innovative technology they need to be able to stay relevant in the years to come.
And that's so when I look at it and I read through these articles, I think you guys even mentioned it in some of them, is that like you guys picked a really big problem to prove the technology, right?
Correct.
Like you picked the cannabis industry because we all know that there's huge issues with banking and regulation in the cannabis industry. And if you could prove that technology works and can solve the issues there, it's just going to build. And I mean, like you said, this is the new technology that utilize blockchain and machine learning, and like that's where banking's going, right?
Well, yeah,
like,
I mean, look, with fraud, right? So, microtransactions or chargebacks. I mean, these institutions they carry $100 to $500 million plus just off to the side, and we call war chest, right? Because they know that
just because of fraud and chargebacks,
they're going to know they're going to have to give that money out to someone. So this whole our theory is dissolving fraud before it happens.
It's an archaic process, the chargeback process.
Yeah.
For both the person holding the card, chargeback is when you dispute a charge. But from the merchant standpoint, when they get this, if you're the restaurant in Ocean City and that guy came here but he disputed his charge, I mean, you have to gather all this data, and you're a little restaurant in Ocean City, so you may not have a copy of the paper bill, and you may not have the full transition, and maybe they tip differently than the number and you feel it was off $1. I mean, there's all these different things that happen, but the chargeback process for most of these institutions is pretty chaotic in itself.
Yeah, so our vision is to be able to dissolve fraud before it happens. And so these institutions, rather than giving away their money, is to keep their money that they can then use to help grow and become bigger and bigger. And that's, at the end of the day, what we're doing. But you're right. We feel like if we can solve the cannabis banking conundrum, the cannabis problem, that basically is an amazing case study that we can then go to the next industry, any high-risk industry or any industry really, to be able to provide better risk management compliance technology out there to help mitigate risk with payments and money in general.
In your beginning case study, you mentioned a Cole memo. Are you guys only focusing on medical, or are you guys looking at? Are you guys focusing in Maryland? Are you guys all over?
We're in Maryland, and let me caveat by saying, so we're very soon launching our CBD compliance, underwriting, onboarding platform in parallel with our payment processing. So you'll be seeing news in the next month about that. And so we're working with an institution in California. We're also working within the state of Maryland. And so dispensaries in the state of Maryland will be able to utilize our merchant service platform by the end of the year. And so we'll have a conversation
for actual cannabis, not just hemp, but
that's
for
correct,
medical
yes.
cannabis.
Yeah. So we have strategically partnered with one of the big middleware payment providers in the United States that has a technology that they don't use, that all they've been waiting for is the compliance risk piece that we have. And so we've gelled them together, and they're creating a solution that is as seamless as anything. So you could walk into a dispensary and pay with any, you can't pay with any card. So AMX is really the only one that will not take transactions. But if you look in the fine lines, Visa and MasterCard have come out.
Really?
And they will, yeah. The thing is people don't realize, it goes back to my original statement, is the banks assume all the risk.
Yeah.
So if the banks are cool,
acquiring banks, it's not as the card brand itself.
Yeah, if the banks accept the risk that they're taking on, Visa and MasterCard will allow those transactions.
That's interesting.
It took a lot of digging and a lot of phone calls and emails.
Because Discover's the only. I've seen some recent talk about Discover really opening things up.
They're kind of in. So there's Visa, MasterCard, then there's Discover. There's kind of tiptoeing.
Yeah.
And
Also
then,
explain the difference. So Visa, MasterCard, what they consider bank cards. So if you get a Visa, MasterCard, it's going to have a bank on that card
correct.
as well. But Discover issues their own cards. American Express issues their own cards.
Correct. Yeah, and AMX is. I mean, they're kind of back here.
Yeah.
So they've come out very aggressively.
But
I
used to work for American Express.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and we had a corporate card for our first probably 9 months of business.
It's still till September.
And
2018, I remember it.
We went to lunch at Backstreet Grill, and a lady came. She's like, "Your card's been declined." And I looked at Chuck, and I was like, "Well, that was fun."
Yeah.
And they shut down personal cards.
My personal card and the company card and
everything.
I've heard that story countless number of times.
So it's about the banks then. It's
about the banks, man. You gotta. So this is what we like to say. Our mission is we empower financial institutions to be the authority on identity. And what that means is creating a true transparent ecosystem for them that provides 100% visibility into what's actually going on. Because honestly, they don't know. And the reason why there's limited banking is because of the fear of the federal government intervening, right? Like, this is a booming industry, but it's one industry of many that banks, credit unions support. Many of them don't want to support one industry with the fear of losing everything. So the ones that have now committed to servicing this industry, limited opportunity, but it's costly. And the reason it's costly is because there really isn't any technology. Well, there is antiquated technology, but a lot of it's being done manual process, to where human resources are needed to perform those duties, which at the end of the day costs money. And so you are seeing very high banking costs. And yes, the banks want to make some money out of this, but honestly, a lot of that is expense. Like, they had to hire an entire new team of people to help manage these programs.
Yep.
So so if I'm wrong in my statement that MasterCard and Visa will support cannabis, it's the bank, it comes down to the issuing bank.
Correct.
Then are you guys the first ones to have and the only ones to have a solution, or are there actually other folks out there that have different style solutions that have the approval of a THSuite or a First Data?
Sure. I can't speak about what other companies are doing because everyone's trying to find their own way, but I'll just say what we're doing and why we're able to do it is that you can't just build one product to solve this problem. You have to have multiple products, and they all have to speak to each other, because as Solvent, we mitigate all the risk and all the transactions and money that comes through the bank. And you can't do that unless you have multiple products speaking to each other. And that's our value add over a lot of these other systems, and why we've been able to penetrate this market so quickly is because we've been able to do that very, very efficiently to go to market.
Would you expect the fee structure to be similar to like a high-risk merchant account?
I mean, honestly, here's our, obviously we're building a company, right? But it's not about for us, it's not about making money. It's about solving a problem. And so our belief, and I can't tell you exactly what those pricing fees are going to be because we're still developing them, but we want to be the Stripe model. We want to be at 2.9 and 30 cents per transaction. Are we going to get there right now? I don't know, but that's where our mindset is, because we want to create an opportunity for small businesses like yourselves to be able to have affordable merchant services. It's a scalable model.
Honestly, if you come to the market with that, there's dispensary owners I just gave you my whole diatribe about how come we're not going to put a product like that in our dispensary, but you change that and give us a safe product at a reasonable rate. And I'll tell you, there's a reason why businesses pay their merchant service fees. It's because people spend more money. They'd much rather be able to put some things on a charge card.
The ability to use an actual card and not have to carry around another fake prepaid whatever kind of card it is. It's just like a normal business transaction.
And by the way, now all that money is not sitting in cash in our drawers. Everything's electronically transferred. It's less money we have to count, less money we could lose.
And I mean, just go so, and that's the biggest piece, right? Is this whole money laundering cash thing. I think everything stems from there. I have some limited basic services at the bank, but I don't have a full suite of a business account. I can't do everything out of there. Hopefully technology like this should mitigate that. I can't get a loan. So if there's transparency,
I'm gonna call Alan, tell him, hey, if I can't do this, you need to call Solvent. Yeah. This is some bullshit.
You're exactly right. It's not just about payment processing, right? It's allowing you all to scale accordingly like you would be in any other industry. So wires, loans, everything, the full suite of services, because again, it all ties down to knowing your customers, KYC. We like to call it KYC on steroids. Like, it's the next evolution of KYC that then the institutions are empowered to be able to offer those additional services that allow in your business to grow, and they're growing as well, right? More deposits into their bank's going to allow them to grow.
This is really strong. I'm really excited to see the announcements that you guys make, and honestly, I'm excited to hopefully become a future client of Solvents. So when you're not working 2 full-time jobs, because I know that starting a business is basically 80-hour week is the minimum. You still do some cool shit for a nonprofit. So
so when I was with Capital Sup, one of our core values as a company, for-profit company, was to give back to the community, and so we naturally we're interested in working with the veteran community in and around Annapolis, and also the youth as well. So we have 3 pillars. We have the veteran community, the youth community, that would be underserved and mentally disabled, and then also Clean Water Initiative. And clean water really encompasses everything, because without clean water to recreate in, we wouldn't be able to do the other 2. And so, for example, in the veteran community, we have a program called WAKOA, and WAKOA is Hawaiian for Water Warriors. We have a partnership with Walter Reed Medical Hospital in D.C., and so men and women that are in active duty or in battle that get physically or mentally injured go through Walter Reed, go through their therapy sessions, and then they release them and they bring them to us. And so we teach them how to paddle. We first started out in the pools at Walter Reed, and then they'll bring them to Annapolis. And this specific program are for men and women that are competitors that want to get back into that competitive atmosphere. And so we, as paddlers, are racers. So there's a whole racing segment of paddling. And so we teach them and bring them to races, so they now can get back into something that motivates them to go out and train for, or to interact really with just the community of people. So we do that, and then for the youth side, we work with the underserved youth community in Annapolis.
Sold him. I really like that story that I saw.
Oh yeah. So with Capital Sup, we're the public housing in Annapolis is a couple of blocks down from where our shop used to be. And some of the kids during the summer, they have nothing to do. Their parents just release them outside, and they just figure out what they do on a daily basis. And so a couple of them figured out, let's go down to the marina, go collect some money, and then go buy something. So they would come down to the marina and take the money from the cash boxes where people would put money in to grab ice. And at the time, obviously what they were doing was wrong, so we called the police. But they never really sat well with us. And so my co-founder, Kevin Haggis, decided to contact the Public Housing Authority of Annapolis and reached out to their youth program coordinator. Was like, hey, this is who we are. This is what we do. We'd love to interact with your youth during the summer and create programs to teach them how to paddle, get them out on the water, teach them about clean water. And so we're right in the middle of that right now. I can tell you it's become my new favorite thing to do is working with these kids because, again, at the end of the day, they're just looking for things to do during the day.
Yeah.
I think you take any kid of any race, creed, ethnicity, and you don't give them something to do, and they're going to get up to trouble.
Yeah.
And I think Chuck, I told Chuck the story when you came in here, and Chuck was like, "Oh my gosh, we were hellions when we were kids," and you know. Jake Day has done a lot of these types of programs, right? We have Doverdale Lacrosse, we have the PAL football team, we have all these kind of new projects really trying to say, hey, instead of just trying to police these kids, or instead of just getting them in trouble for acting up, let's occupy them. Let's give them something to do that's going to get out some energy and build some camaraderie and maybe introduce them to some people that don't look like them, that are authority figures, and all of a sudden they say, you know what, maybe that 40-year-old white person isn't out to be a dick to me because I now have a relationship with somebody like that. These officers that I now saw in my community help them and my little brother play football. Now when I have interaction with them, it's not maybe a fear or this unfamiliarity, but that's Officer Jones, and I know him, and he's part of my community. It's about this building this community, right?
Yeah.
So when I read the story, was it the Capitol that I read it? Basically, you know, you had these challenges with folks kind of not vandalizing, but just taking advantage of your business, and then the outreach. And I saw the picture, and the kids, they're smiling ear to ear, and you can tell they're having a great time. And now maybe they spread that love of paddling to somebody else. And I just think it's
that's the hope. I mean, we ultimately want to provide a positive impact in their lives that they can continue on and remember and take to another person. So there's that end of the spectrum. But at the very least, at minimum, we're at least giving them something to do during the day. So there's positive impact everywhere, right? There's nothing negative about what we're doing. Right, exactly. But overarching over everything is just the clean water component. And so even here in Salisbury, like traditionally mid-Atlantic cities around the water quality has been subpar and has been neglected for generations. And now like you're seeing a more progressive movement to help clean the water because, I mean, having clean water can only make everything better, right? Real estate value, foot traffic downtown. I mean, just imagine if you could go paddle downtown in the canals in Salisbury 15 years ago, like there would be people walking downtown all day long, but there wasn't like that, and the downtown area was a ghost town, and no one would come down here and
wastewater
interact.
Treatment plant was constantly having issues. I mean, the water, we had some really bad water quality issues, and Jake's done a good job of trying to make an initiative. But I think I was listening to NPR yesterday, and there was an initiative to try to make the Anacostia waterways swimmable again.
Yeah.
Right? And in my mind was like, you know, that's a huge undertaking, right? But like, it sucks it's sad to think that like my kids won't have water to go swim in. I mean, the Nanacoke, like Roaring Point and stuff like that, because of all the bacteria levels and stuff like that, I mean, it's becoming less and less safe to swim in these smaller waterways, and to think that like the only place a kid will ever get to swim is a pool is a really sad thought to me. Yeah. So I think especially on the Eastern Shore where the water is like our beauty and really one of our greatest resources, I think it's awesome that, you know, there's initiatives are happening far and wide.
Well, I've met several groups in and around Salisbury that are doing similar work, so I think you guys are in good shape. But, I mean, honestly, I've been swimming in the Waikamaca River since I was a child. I will say, you know, I won't say it's the cleanest water in the world, but as long as it hasn't had a heavy rain the last 24 hours, like I think you'll all right if you have a pretty decent immune system. But, yeah, it definitely can get better, and it's on its way.
So, and so you have your nonprofit, you work in, and you still compete a little bit, right?
Yeah. All right. So back to, so I used to stand-up paddle race professionally. It is a professional sport. It's not super well known. It's more of an international sport than here domestically, but it's provided me amazing experiences. I've been to the Caribbean. I've been to Tahiti.
What's a typical race? Like, is it a half mile, mile?
It's kind of, I like to compare it to running. So you have your sprint style races, and then you have like your 5K, 10K, and then you have your 30 mile, 40 mile races. So I've done a little bit of everything. You know, one of the highlight races that I like doing, and many others, is called it's called Chattajack. It's in Tennessee. It's a 32-mile paddle down the Tennessee River Gorge. It's in Chattanooga. You start in Chattanooga and downtown, and then you paddle 32 miles south, and you end up in Georgia, I think it is. But It's just a credit. It's like with ultra running or ultra swimming. It's more about finishing and more about mind versus body, right?
Yeah.
Because physically, like, we can do it, but mentally, I mean, it gets it
gets a little tough, I'm sure.
Places.
Yeah, I mean, you're 15 miles in and everything hurts and you're dead, and all of a sudden you realize there's no one around me. I still have 10 more miles to go.
Well, I really like paddling. I mean, for a lot of different reasons, but one, it allows me to be myself and allows me to get into thought processes that I can't. Yeah, like I really do a lot of my best thinking when I'm in the water. And that time is invaluable because, I mean, you know, I'm married now. I have obviously a full-time career starting this company, a nonprofit. Like, I don't have much time to myself, and I do like my time to myself. Yeah. So, you know, being able to stay in shape, being able to be on the water, and being able to have, an hour or two of just me and by myself thinking, I love it.
I know Chuck's, when he moved to Edgewood. Yeah. Did you buy yours before you got there?
No, so I bought my paddle board, and it's just like a basic paddle board for me to go out and mess around with. But like, same thing, man. I love it. Like, I we're in London town, right off of the creek on the South River, on the out in South Creek. So I'll take it out to the South River, like to the South River Bridge, and like, I love it. It's a hell of a workout. That's why I like it so much, man. It's like, it's fantastic. And I always say I just don't have the time, like you said, running these businesses and with 2 kids. Like, I just want to find something and get back into it, like that competitive like nature in me.
We just moved to Leonard Mill Pond.
Yeah, your next door neighbor is Bob Davis, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
We are. And I've just recently started getting out there a little bit and playing on a paddleboard. And it is my first experience was this is a really good workout. Yeah. It was a lot tougher than I had. I mean, everyone seems like they're just like carefree, but I mean, after you get out for a little bit, especially if you want to get into a rhythm and stuff, it's definitely a really good workout. But it's really nice. And
I think being on the water and having that sunlight on you, right? I'll just listen to the podcast the way here that they're like, you get 20 to 30 minutes of direct sunlight every morning before you start your day.
Dr. Hoffman guaranteed recipe right there. Get your sunlight.
I mean, that's what it's all about, being on the water. And paddling is a non-impact activity. So like running, like you're putting a lot of impact stress on your lower body. Paddling is just all body movements, right? Not a high impact stress. So just going out for a few hours, like 30 minutes to 45 minutes 3 times a week.
Real quick, back to the Tennessee race.
Yeah.
How long does it take you to do
that? So it depends. On a stand-up paddleboard, I have done that race in about 5 hours and 15 minutes.
Are you are you taking breaks and eating?
Yeah, so so there's different categories of people that do these races. So I'm the type of person that's in it to win it. So I'm training all year. I'm not saying I'm sprinting, but I'm going race pace for that entire time. And then you have different people do different things, different reasons why they're doing it. And so there's people that are out there on the water for over 8 hours. This year, I'm back in the outrigger. So I call it OC1. So it's a single person outrigger, much faster than stand-up paddleboards. And I did it 2 years ago and finished second, and I got 4 hours and 24 minutes. So my goal this year is to win the race and do under 420. So that's the goal. We'll see what happens. It really, awesome. Well, it depends on myself and my training starting, Solvent. Free time is
at a premium, right?
Not there anymore.
I can build my future and pay my bills so I can win this race. All of a sudden,
well, the cool thing about Capital Sub, right, is a paddle company. So I was just always paddling, or I had more. Not that I had more free time, but I had more flexibility in my day. And myself, and then Adam, who's been doing sales his whole life, like being in an office every day has been a learning experience. And it's just like the amount of coffee, you start pounding, and then just I always got to get up. And
it's full of like life-killing habits.
Oh,
you get
crazy.
Bad food,
sitting down for most of the day.
Tons of coffee.
Well, you guys are in downtown Annapolis, right? So
we're right on West
Can you stash the paddleboard somewhere and like take the secret lunch trip?
I could. I usually try to get out first thing in the morning or afternoon, or I'm sorry, at evening. And so I'll either be out at like 6 a.m. or 5:30, or I'll wait to go out till like at 6:30 p.m. I don't like breaking up my day to go paddle. because depending on my type of workout, I might get too tired and then I lose focus the rest of the day. So I like to be, whenever I sit down, I want to be zoned in for that day. And then when I'm done, I'm done. And then, obviously, as you all know, first thing you do when you want to get home after dinner is check your emails, do all that, work a couple more hours. But I've been able to figure out it's not easy. It's funny. My wife has pretty much known me the entire time I've had my own businesses, so she doesn't know anything else. So she's used to it. But structuring your day is super critical. And if you don't do it right, and I'm still learning myself after years, it can really it can get overwhelming pretty quickly.
It's a podcast in and of itself.
Yeah.
For all of us.
Tell people where they can find you. Give out Solvent's information. The good thing about this podcast is it's got a lot of folks that own dispensaries and a lot of people in the industry that'll be looking for you. Yeah.
So our website is solvent.io. And that's a funny story in itself is when we were going down this path when we created Solvent, solvent.com was taken and we were trying to buy it and it was for sale for like $8,000. And the day that we wanted to go buy it, the dude jacked the price up to like $75,000. So we're like, see you later. But IO is like the new tech thing now. Yeah. Right. So we're Solvent.io. That's our website. We're on LinkedIn at Solvent. And then our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter is all at Get Solvent. So that's a company. If anyone wants to check me out personally, my Instagram is _ Brian Meyer. Same as Facebook. I don't dabble in Twitter. But I'm more. My life has been very visual, so I've always been connected to Instagram and Facebook. What's interesting because I'm the marketer, communications guy. I built Capital Sup off social media, so dabbling into the Twitter world and LinkedIn now has been a learning experience, but a lot of fun at the same time because in our world, everyone's on LinkedIn and Twitter, not so much Instagram. Well, for you guys, Instagram and Facebook because it's visual, right? You're selling product, but that's always a fun way to.
Are you guys able to promote ads and stuff on Facebook?
It's funny you asked that because over the weekend I started doing some testing, and I haven't tried on Instagram and Facebook, but I got a Twitter ad approved, and I got a LinkedIn ad approved. But I will say that I framed my messaging more based on fraud rather than cannabis. Yeah. So very particular, and I know you guys have been dealing with that. When I was with THSuite, I helped several dispensaries with that, but it's sad. It's a pain in the butt. I wish it was different because you guys deserve every right to promote your business. And again, this is just one way why you guys are one of the best because you're doing things like this to help connect to your audience.
Thank you so much, man. This has been a great interview. I really thank you. And I'd love to have you on again.
Totally.
A year down the road when we see really.
Even a couple months down the road, if you guys launch some products or something, come back for some updates. I think this is such a big issue for all of us in the industry. I can't tell you exactly when, but by October, November, we'll be out in market with our.
When you guys are out,
maybe we can do it live at PAH. Yeah, in the market.
Yeah.
Thanks again, Brian. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, guys. Brian. Appreciate it.